this week on the Deep Leadership Podcast.
I think that's the bottom line of leading is you want people, you want to change the status quo, you want to make things better, and you want to help people grow and develop so they're more competent, more capable to get it done. And I think finding that optimal spot will help them the most.
This episode is brought to you by the Salty Sailor Coffee Company, the official coffee of the Deep Leadership Podcast. Salty Sailor is a veteran-owned coffee brand on a mission to deliver premium, fresh roasted coffee while making a positive impact in the world. Their motto is drink coffee and do good, which reflects their commitment to making amazing coffee and actively supporting the military community. 10% of every order goes to the Navy Marine Corps Relief Society, an organization dedicated to helping sailors, Marines, and their families in times of need. All our listeners get 10% off every order of their amazing coffee by using the discount code DEEP at checkout. So check them out at saltysailorcoffee.com. Welcome to the Deep Leadership Podcast. Today I'm joined by a returning guest to the show, Paul Thornton. For the past 40 years, Paul has been a student and teacher of leadership concepts. He has been a college professor, coach, human resources executive, parent, and grandparent. He's written over 100 articles and 22 books on various aspects of management and leadership. His latest book is called Leadership: Are You Providing the Right Amount?, which helps leaders determine the right balance for leading their teams. Now, I've always said that leadership is a balance, and oftentimes too much of a good thing can become a bad thing. And I'm excited to have Paul back on the show to talk about finding leadership balance. So, Paul, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Sean. I appreciate you having me back.
Oh, it's good to see you. And again, returning guests, I always love because, we've already met, we've talked, and you've already added a lot of value to our listeners. And now you got a new book out, which I'm excited to talk about. And right away, when I saw the title, I'm like, oh, I love this subject because it's something that's near and dear to my heart. And it's this idea of the right amount of leadership. So what was the big idea behind the book?
Kind of the big idea is that when leaders provide the right amount of something, whether it's coaching or monitoring or giving feedback, whatever it happens to be, if they provide the precise exact amount that the person needs, they're going to be most effective and they're going to help the person the most. We often fall in the trap of providing too much or too little of what we're involved with, and that is less effective for the recipient of what you're doing. So it's finding that optimal point, that precise amount of what will make the biggest difference for the person you're working with.
That makes a lot of sense. So walk us through an example. You mentioned coaching. So what's the problem with too much coaching and too little coaching?
Well, I think some leaders provide too much coaching. I had a tennis coach who would provide so much instruction and so many suggestions. My head was spinning after a while, and there was too much information going on, and I wasn't clear then what I should be doing. I was overthinking it, and it really wasn't helping me. I think sometimes some leaders have big egos. They want to impress people, and they go on and on. They provide too many ideas, too many suggestions, and the person gets overwhelmed and confused, and it really doesn't help them. The other extreme is not enough coaching. Some leaders, some managers have the attitude that the person should know how to do their job. I'm not going to coach them. That's their problem. Let them figure it out. That attitude. So that's not good either. Everybody needs a coach at times. Everyone can benefit from a coach. Early in my career, I had an office beside a manager who was very good at managing up. He connected a lot with his boss and the senior leaders on the company, but he did very little connecting down with his direct reports, and he did little to no coaching of them. So they really didn't get any of the advantages of his insights and his ideas about what they could do to perform better and, be more effective. So again, dealing with the person, figuring out, what will help the person the most, how much coaching will be beneficial, and not overdoing it and finding that optimal spot. And we never get it right every time. Obviously, it's a trial and error. You learn from it, you tweak your approach, you get feedback from the recipient and say, are you getting this? Am I providing too much detail, too much information? And you make adjustments, and hopefully you get better at it, and you get more effective, and you help the person improve and be more successful in doing their job.
It makes a lot of sense. And one of the things we were talking about before we press record is that it depends on the person too, right?
Yeah.
Like each individual. So some individuals may prefer more coaching
Yeah.
than other, people. Like I tend to be a kind of like I can figure it out on my own kind of person, right? So if you give me too
Hmm.
much coaching, I get frustrated. Like your tennis coach, I get too much I don't like.
Yeah.
But I also don't want you to just leave me alone. I need a little bit of coaching, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
So finding the balance for me, like, a leader is probably going to be on the low end of the scale, but
Hmm.
maybe someone else higher end of the scale is more appropriate. That's what they prefer. So part of it is also knowing your employees and knowing what works with them, right?
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I think you're totally correct. Everyone's different, everyone's unique. Finding out and knowing the people in terms of how much feedback they want, how many suggestions, what type of guidance and input do they need. It varies from person to person. And it takes a while to get that right with each person, but after a while you kind of get a sense of what's going to be most helpful for this person in this situation. And I think that's the wisdom of being a seasoned leader, is you have that insight and you can figure it out, and you can provide quicker what's the appropriate amount for this person.
Yeah, yeah. And that's one of the challenges of teaching leadership is that you say something like, well, you've got to find your right level of, say, coaching for an employee.
Yeah.
And then your student says, well, what is the right level? And
Right.
you're like, well, you got
Right.
to figure that out. And you're
Right.
like, wait a
Right.
second.
Right.
It's
They want the answer, right?
there
Tell
is
me.
no there is no straight answer. And so
Yeah.
it's an iterative process where you learn through
Yeah.
through feedback and discussions with your people to find out what works and what doesn't work.
Right.
Um, well, one of the things, Paul, I'm curious, you've written so many books on leadership. They're so um, direct and to the point, and they're on specific issues that are key to leadership. What compelled you to write about this particular topic at this time?
Well, two things. I like writing. I do a lot of writing every day. I try to write something on leadership. But my mission in life, I think, is to try to come up with simple and practical ways that will help managers and leaders be more effective. So I'm always kind of looking for what's that angle, what's that insight that would be helpful for the average manager, average leader out there. And I don't think there's a lot of books, at least I haven't seen many books on this topic. You mentioned balance before. Um, I don't, there's some out there, but not a lot. It's not a topic that gets discussed a lot. And I think, as you said, is one of the most challenging parts of being a leader is developing that knack or that wisdom or that connection and understanding people such that you can provide precisely what they need to grow and develop. Like we were talking about earlier, it's like being a parent with your kids. Some kids like a lot of feedback, and you can yell and scream at them a little bit, and that's fine. Someone else will recoil and be devastated by any raising of the voice, even one little level.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
finding out what is appropriate, what's going to help the person, is a knack, and it's something you got to work at and develop. And it's the old saying that everyone's unique, everyone's got a particular style or approach that is going to be most impactful or most effective for them.
Yeah, I love it. And, and it kind of is consistent with what we've talked about on the show for all these years. We say, there's no such thing as a cookie cutter approach to leadership, right?
Yeah,
It is all about the people and what works best for each individual. And you have to know your people if you
yeah.
want to know how to lead your people. So it's about getting to know people. It's interesting. I bumped into this subject of the right amount of leadership or the wrong or the right level of leadership when I was thinking about because I was thinking one day through the idea of micromanagement, right? So
Mhm.
we all pretty much consistently say micromanagement is bad, and micromanagement is too much leadership involvement. The leader is way too involved. So
Yeah,
my listeners probably have heard me tell the story before. I had a leader that I worked for one time who was a micromanager, and I called him TQ. That was my nickname for him because it was 20 questions. No matter what
yeah,
I was working on, he had 20 questions he had for me. So if you have too much involvement, it leads to micromanagement. And
yeah,
people that are micromanaged are frustrated. And the feeling is that you don't trust me and you're asking
yeah,
a lot of questions, right?
yeah,
The opposite of not enough involvement, right,
yeah.
is actually a problem as well. And I call that absent leadership. So the
Hmm.
leader is not present. And
Hmm.
so not involved at all. And the feeling when you have a boss like that, and I've had a boss like that as well, is
Hmm.
that they don't care.
Hmm.
So it's either you don't trust me or you don't
Yeah,
care. And all it
yeah.
is that level of involvement
Mm,
and so just like you're saying in this book, it is this idea of the right
mm,
amount involvement. Too much is micromanagement.
mm.
Not enough is absent
Hmm.
leadership, which is just as bad. Both are very frustrating for employees. So
Hmm.
I love that you've kind of found this sort of issue and are kind of focused in on it.
Mm.
Um,
Well, let me comment on that, John, because I
sure.
think I have a good example.
Yeah.
I was teaching my daughter how to ride her bike years ago. So she had never ridden a bike before, first time. I'm micromanaging what she's doing. I'm observing her. I'm giving her a lot of feedback. The first several times we do it, I'm holding the seat behind her and telling her how to balance and if she's going to fall, how to protect herself. And, so you would say I was micromanaging that situation, but in my opinion, that is what was called for at that time because she was
Yes.
clueless. She had never done it. She needed precise direction. She needed to be monitored very closely. Now, once she got the hang of it, let's say 3 months later, now she's ridden the bike by herself now and she's doing well. Now it's crazy for me to be micromanaging her because she knows how to do it. She doesn't need that, attention and focus I was giving her before. Maybe I casually observe her a little bit here and there, make sure she's looking for oncoming traffic and things like that. But the point is, we need to change our approach and style as the person grows and develops, and we need to alter how much monitoring we're doing. You know, the problem I see is some managers never change.
Yeah.
They're micromanagers, and their employee has grown and developed, and they're capable and confident, and they've done the task 28 times and the manager's still telling them and watching them and giving them feedback on each step and all that. And of course the employee is totally frustrated and annoyed. And yeah, like you say, they don't think they're trusted and they're, just turned off, demotivated. So
Yeah.
that's not good. So adjusting your approach and style as people grow and develop is critically important. Hopefully most leaders do it, some don't though. We all know that one person or that person we've had or seen who just does the same thing no matter how much experience the person has, the employee they're dealing with.
Those kind of I'll throw this at you. Those kind of bosses, and I experienced them in my 22 years in corporate. To me, it's almost like they lacked empathy. So they lack the ability to get that natural feedback from another human being, like that
Yeah,
frustrated, like, geez, leave me alone, guy.
yeah,
I mean, when normal human interaction, you're going to be sending off signals like, hey, get off my back. I got this
yeah,
figured out, right? But
Hmm.
you're saying what I saw is many of these managers, especially those who were micromanagers, didn't get the hint. They
Mm,
weren't picking up on the signals, the
mm,
human signals from their people saying, "Hey,
hmm.
lighten up. I know
Yeah,
how to do this." Right.
yeah.
So I saw the ones that were consistent and never changed, as their employees developed and needed less direction, and they
Hmm.
stayed with the same approach. They seem to lack empathy. They lack that the noticing
Hmm.
the verbal and nonverbal cues, like, "Hey, I got this, leave me alone," type of
Yeah,
thing. They're
yeah,
very much, empathy is a part of it, is being able to sense how your employee is responding to your feedback, right?
yeah. Yeah, I think that's very true. I think they often lack self-awareness
Mm,
and they lack empathy for what's going on with the other person. And they kind of view their role as being a teller or someone who's going to monitor very closely. And they think that's what their job is, and they're going to do that, and they're not going to change. And they just keep doing it over and over. I think fortunately that's not a large percentage of managers, but some fall into that category.
yeah, yeah. So let's give us some other examples of maybe too much or not enough in leadership roles. So one of the ones that I talk about, I think in an article I wrote a while back, was like being, so being too nice or too cruel, right? So you can be a manager that's, "Oh, it's okay, everything's so fine," and
Right,
and then people get away with murder, right? And there's
right.
no consequences
No
for
consequence. Yeah,
anything,
yeah.
right? And so good employees get frustrated because bad employees are not held to account, right?
Yep.
And then if you're too cruel, like if you're just an angry and you're
Hmm.
yelling and you're negative all the time, then that affects the entire mood of the
Hmm.
company as well. So your whole department is reflective of your mood, right? This
Hmm. Hmm.
angry, bitter,
Yep.
reactionary kind of thing. So
Hmm.
again, too nice, too mean, both
Yep.
are bad,
Yep.
so you have to
Yep.
find that middle ground. So do you have some others that you
Yeah,
talk about in
another
the book?
one that I think is very common is collaborating.
Mm,
There's some
yeah.
managers that collaborate on every problem, issue. They
Yes.
call
Yes.
meetings after meetings and they want to discuss it and analyze it and get everybody's input. And they go on and on and on. And some of these meetings, you've been in them and I've been in them, they go way too long. Decisions don't get made.
Mm,
And it's really it's a killer. It's a time killer, and productivity goes down because you're in meetings all the time. Um, don't get me wrong, some collaboration can be very productive and useful. Um, the other extreme, some managers do little or no collaboration. They say,
yeah.
I'm going to make all the decisions, and, no one needs to know, and I don't need that input. I'm going to decide. That's wrong too, and that's not effective. So I was reading in, I think it was Harvard Business Review was saying that, I don't know, some employees are saying they're spending 80% of their time in meetings collaborating with their colleagues. And it's just, like I say, a time killer. It just, at some point, some discussion's good. At some point, you got to make a decision. After you've heard the input and what have you, make a decision, move on, get on with it. So I think that's a very common one of too much and too little and finding the optimal spot. Um, Another one is just setting goals. I mean, some managers set way too many goals. I knew one manager, he had 38 goals and he was tracking on his dashboard and, you
I've
know,
done that.
yeah, and it's like the employees were like confused or overwhelmed or
Yeah.
it lacked focus. They didn't know really what was important. The goals changed every day, every week, rather than just having like three clear goals of what we're trying to get done and making sure everybody's, you know, understanding that. So yeah, too many goals or too few, I suppose you could say, could be a problem also. I don't see that happening too often. It's more too many. Um,
Well,
so
I'll throw this out. I mean, one of the
yeah,
things I noticed, like when I started my corporate career, is in the Navy, I knew what the mission was. Like,
yeah,
okay, we carry out the mission, we get everybody home safe. Everybody knew what the mission was, very
yeah,
clear. when I got into corporate, I never knew what the mission was. It was never clear. Like it was
Yeah.
always, are we trying to save money? Are we trying to make good quality? Are we
Yeah.
like I didn't know. Like so I would say the too few goals would be not being clear on what are the vital few, what is the main thing that we have to get done this month, this week, this
Hmm.
year, right?
Yeah.
So I think part of a job of a leader is to sort of whittle those 57 things we got to do down to here's what really is important and here's what I need you to be thinking about every day.
Mm.
And that is really helpful. And I think too many leaders leave it to chance that people are going to figure out what the main thing is. And
Mm.
you have to be very clear with that. If you're
Hmm.
not, good people are going to be working on different things. You got the one guy working on quality, one guy working on cost savings, and then
Right.
ultimately those two come into a clash. When you save a bunch of money on a part, that
Yeah.
always breaks, right?
Yep.
And that I'm speaking from manufacturing scenarios, but because I've lived those many times where people
Right.
are chasing two different opposite goals in the
Hmm.
same department.
Mm. Mm. Very true. Clarity of goals and having a few goals that you're going to focus in on, I think is so important. And it's so easy to get scattered and unfocused and, you know, start going in multiple directions and you're not sure what the priorities are. And yeah, that's a biggie. And the best managers and leaders, I think, are crystal clear on what the top 1 to 3 priorities are. And they talk about those a lot. They remind people of them. Some leaders post them so they're visible for all employees to see, and they report on them and discuss them at meetings and stuff like that. So yeah, I think that's another good example of too much, too little, and
Yeah,
finding
yeah.
that optimal spot.
I've never really thought about the collaboration one, and that's a great example because I have lived through paralysis by analysis of a boss who would
Mm.
make a decision, and that can be so frustrating because it's such, like you said, it's such a time killer, sitting in
Mm.
these meetings and like, didn't we discuss this last week? What? And one of the
Mm.
things that I like to tell leaders is that you have to do things that only the leader can do. And only the leader
Mm.
can do is make that decision, right? So
Hmm.
you can have all the collaboration sessions you want, but that's still not going to get the decision made. Your job as a leader is to take that input, the good, the bad,
Hmm.
the ugly, and then make a decision, put the rudder in the water, steer the ship in a certain direction. That's your job,
Hmm.
And so when
Yeah.
you have too much collaboration, it's a leader that's being indecisive and not making decisions and not being effective as a decision maker.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there are some decisions where you want the group to discuss it and come together and gain consensus and together make a decision that everybody buys into. But then there's other decisions that the leader is going to ask for input and then go off and make the decision on their own, you know? So again, it varies. Each situation is unique and you got to figure out what style is appropriate here and what am I going to do?
Yeah. So, what kind of guidance can we give leaders to trying to find the right balance and the right amount of leadership for any particular characteristic or action that we're trying to do?
Well, I think one thing is self-reflection is always useful. Thinking about what you're doing in terms of delegating and monitoring and setting goals, establishing rules, all of these different things, and asking yourself the question, am I setting too many rules or too few, or am I doing too much collaboration or not enough? Where am I on the spectrum? And then getting a little bit more precise on what topics should I be doing more or less of something, more communicating or less communicating, or giving more feedback or less feedback. And then going down even one more level is thinking of the person you're dealing with,
Yeah.
their unique needs and their unique style and approach and what works for them. And am I adjusting and tweaking my approach to make the biggest impact when I work with them? I think too, you can, observe your colleagues, how much collaboration do they do? In terms of feedback, how much feedback do they give employees? getting advice and guidance from your coach or mentor can always be helpful. But being open to this topic and considering it and thinking about what can I do to tweak my approach a bit so I can be more effective and get people what they need to improve and be successful. I think that's the bottom line of leading is you want people, you want to change the status quo, you want to make things better, and you want to help people grow and develop so they're more competent, more capable to get it done. And I think finding that optimal spot will help them the most.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things you said, self-reflection, that's kind of interesting. And so when I think of self-reflection, it means that you have to have an element of humility in there to say that maybe I'm not perfect, right?
Mm,
So
yeah.
I would imagine that those with a high ego who are not necessarily willing to take that opportunity to reflect
Mm,
and or listen to feedback would have the risk they risk doing the wrong levels of leadership in a particular area, right? Because they're
hmm.
not open to feedback either through self-reflection or through feedback from others.
Yeah, I think that's very accurate, John, that you have to be humble, you have to be open, you have to want to improve, and you have to fully consider the ideas you come up with as well as the feedback you get from others. Like I said, your coach, mentor, colleagues, and be willing. I think you have to be flexible and adjust and make adjustments these days. The world is changing, as we know, faster and faster, and we need to be mindful of what do I need to do regarding my approach and style to be more effective. And if we just keep doing what we did 10 years ago, we're not going to be as effective as we could be.
Hmm.
So being open to that and yeah, reflecting on it and you know and constant learning. I mean, attending podcasts and reading books and seminars and workshops and all that stuff. I mean, it's a lifelong journey to keep working on your skills and your knowledge and your style and approach. It never ends.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll throw this out at you. So this is something I've noticed I've been doing a lot lately, just to
Mm.
get your feedback on it. So I've been leading people in the manufacturing world for 30 plus years. I have
Hmm.
seen every problem that will happen. And I'm not
Hmm.
saying every problem, but most problems. I mean,
Hmm.
I've had everything from beavers nesting in an outflow pipe where we couldn't run production to
Hmm.
fires to flooding to you name it. I've had those kind of
Yeah.
problems, parts issues, you name it. So I've seen a lot, right?
Yeah.
And so when something happens, I kind of know how it's going to play out, right?
Yeah.
Because I've been doing this for 3 decades.
Yeah.
But one of the things I purposely do is I sort of don't give the answer right away.
Yeah.
I want to let my younger employees get those experiences of learning how to deal with challenges. And so I purposely hold back a little bit and not give the answer right away because I want them to sort of struggle a little bit, get a
Hmm.
little learning in.
Hmm.
Am I bad? Am I wrong for doing that? Or is
Not at
that is
all. No, I
because
think that is absolutely the right thing to do. I think we often learn by struggling with the problem or issue we're dealing with. Um, I think also asking questions like, how do you define the problem? Or what do you see as the obstacle here? And what do you think would be a way we can deal with it? And, asking questions, of course, forces people to think, you know, it forces you to analyze and to connect the dots and to come up with plausible ideas of what maybe what's going on. But yeah, I think giving people the answer too quickly is not good. It doesn't help them grow and develop. I think again, it's like raising children, at some point with your kids when they hit the early teens, a lot of it is discussion about, what would you do in this situation and
yeah.
why? And if this happened, what would you be thinking and blah, blah, blah. And that helps them grow and mature and think through, what they would do and why they would do it. I think
Yeah, yeah.
that's really a great opportunity to grow and gain insights and mature. So
Yeah, and
I
I
think you're
like to
doing the
call it.
right thing, John.
Oh, thanks. But I like to call it like controlled failure. Like I'm going to let you make a few mistakes and I'm right
Yeah,
here. I know the right answer, so
yeah,
I'm not going to
yeah,
I'm not going to let it be a disaster, but I want you to make struggle a little bit and make a bad decision and think through why you're doing something a certain
yeah,
way and
yeah,
sometimes I feel a little bit like an evil genius like I'm not going to, oh, well, this will
yeah,
be interesting to watch how they do. But it's
yeah,
but I think it's really important. Just like, a young child learns how to tie their shoe and maybe you help them in the beginning, but eventually it's like, you know how to do it. You
yeah,
need to try it, but it's
yeah,
hard. I know,
yeah,
but the more you do it, the better you're going to get at it. But if I
yep,
do it for you, you're never going to learn. So I really
hmm
do believe in that. And,
yeah,
but
yeah,
sometimes I feel myself like, oh, I'm being mean for not, because I know
yeah.
the right answer here, but I'm not giving it to them. And I feel like, but I think it's the right thing to do. I really do.
I do too. And kind of another example of this is a little bit different, but I know of a hockey coach who he videotapes the games, and each player has to analyze the videotape and they have to look at their own performance and they
Mm.
have to identify what's one thing they did really well and what's one thing they didn't do so well and could they do to change and improve next time. So
Ooh.
he's forcing them to critique their own performance and come up with their strength and a weakness and what they're going to do differently going forward. And I think that's another technique that is great for keeping ownership of growth and development and learning with in this case, the hockey player, but same idea, in the workplace, holding them accountable for, learning the lesson and figuring it out and, you know,
Yeah.
doing trial and error learning sometimes is the best way to
Yeah.
make the real learning sink in,
And I don't want to take that opportunity away from them. I
Yeah.
often say, one of the gifts we can give people is a challenge. I know for me in my career, if I hadn't been given a number of really difficult things, I
Hmm.
wouldn't have matured as a leader. So
Yes.
one of the gifts we give our people that work for us is the opportunity to struggle and learn and to do something really difficult and outside the comfort zone. And so
Yeah.
I love it when an employee is like, well, this is hard. I'm struggling. This, I didn't realize it was this difficult, so it's like, okay, we're learning, there's some data points happening. There's some learning happening.
Yeah.
And especially too, when you have younger employees and they're thinking about what they want to do in their career and you give them an opportunity, like I want to get into sales. Okay, well, let's do a small project where you get a chance to
Mm,
sell. How'd it
mm,
go? What's your feedback? Did you like
mm,
it?
mm,
Was it
mm,
frustrating?
mm,
You were uncomfortable. It's like, okay, well then, or they learn, hey, maybe that's not my interest. I thought it
mm.
was, but it wasn't. So you give them those experiences to help them find their right, what they really want to do in their careers.
Yep. Yeah, I think that type of learning makes a huge impact when they experience something directly for themselves. Reading a book, going to a seminar, what have you, you get some ideas and some tips and what have you. That's good. But experiencing it directly, doing the project, failing in part of it, figuring out what you did wrong, that is so impactful and so meaningful for the person. It's a huge opportunity to grow and develop and mature.
Yeah, it's so true. Absolutely. Well, this has been a great discussion. I mean, I
Mm,
love this idea of the right amount of leadership.
mm.
What else are you working on? I know you're always got something in the works. So what's
I
coming up next with you, Paul?
well, I'm working on a kind of an interesting project. I'm working on another book on leadership that highlights some of the major themes around leadership, which is good. But here's the angle I'm working on. I have five grandsons, and I'm interviewing my five grandsons on each of these leadership topics, and I'm getting their point of
Wow.
view and their thoughts. Now their ages go from 17 down to 9. And so it's very interesting for me to hear their comments of what makes an effective leader. And when they talk about like their basketball coach or their teacher or this or that, it's very interesting to see their insights. Now, a lot of their insights have aligned with my thinking, but on occasion they come up with something like, well, I never thought of it that way, that's a completely different way of looking
Wow.
at it, so it's been fun for me, and I'm learning a lot, but that's kind of what I'm working on now. Yeah,
You know,
getting
what's exciting about that is that it's like like someone's view of leadership who hasn't read a single book on leadership.
right,
You know,
exactly,
this is
exactly,
a natural human reaction, maybe a young
exactly.
human, but a natural human reaction to
Yep.
leadership.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
I love
Yep.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly what I was trying to do. A non-biased view. They've read no books on leadership. They've attended no seminars, no workshops, just their pure gut reaction to what makes an effective teacher or coach or parent or, this or that. So it's
Wow.
interesting. Yeah.
I love it. It's such a unique and fresh
Yeah.
because again, like what I was saying before, you know the answer,
Yeah.
but what
Right.
you want to hear is that what they say about it, and that's really neat.
Yeah.
That's an exceptional way to look at leadership. I absolutely love that
Mm.
because you're going to get, I mean, it's funny because I often say like, how can you tell if someone has is a good leader? Well, you look around, like everyone's listening to that person.
Mm.
Like they're holding court. Whenever there's a problem, that they all go to this one person. So I already know who the informal leaders are in an
Mm-hmm.
organization based on human behavior.
Mm. Mm.
And so
Mm.
your
Mm.
grandchildren are gonna they're going to give you
Mm.
their natural reaction without having
Mm.
read a single bit on leadership, which is
Mm.
I love that. That's fantastic. So
Mm.
kind of a fresh approach
Yeah,
to do you have a name for the book yet?
I do not.
Okay.
I haven't come up with a name yet, but hopefully a year from now, John, you'll have me back on and we can talk
Yeah,
about that book.
I love it. That sounds like an exciting book. You're on. We'll have you back.
Yeah.
You were here. You were on the show a year ago. We'll get you back when this one's done, and we'll talk about it. So,
All
Paul,
right.
what final message would you like to leave with our listeners today?
Well, I think the big idea I'll go back to is as a leader, it's a great opportunity to impact people's lives and to help them grow and develop, mature. And I think if you can find the right amount of whatever it is you're working with, coaching, giving feedback, establishing goals, whatever it might be, you're going to be most effective and you're going to help your employees and your team members the most if you hit that optimal sweet spot, if you will. And that will be a plus for you and your employees. So keep that in mind.
Fantastic. Such a good point, Paul. I love it. I'm glad to have you back on the show. This book is fantastic, and thank you for writing it. How can our listeners find out more about you, this new book, and all your books?
All my books are on Amazon. All of my books, too, are on the shorter side. You probably can read them in an hour. They're also inexpensive, so you won't go broke buying any of my books. And if you can't afford it, email me and I'll send it to you free. But anyway, they're on Amazon. I post a fair amount on LinkedIn. My site on LinkedIn, I try to post something on leadership there every other day or so. So that's another way to see what I'm thinking about.
Fantastic. We'll go ahead and put links to Paul's LinkedIn so you can follow him and see what he's talking about. Also, we'll put links for the books. We'll put a link for this particular book, and then we'll also put a link for all these other books. So you can see him. If you go to his author page on Amazon, you can see that he's a very prolific. What's the
Yes,
word I'm looking for?
prolific.
Prolific. You're a very prolific author. I've only written 3 books, and I've written a couple of chapters in other books, so I'm nowhere near your level of writing. But I've got
Mm.
an excuse. I'm going back to school, so that's my excuse for
Mhm.
not coming out with a new book in a while. So, but
Yeah.
congratulations on all your success. I love it. I love the fact that you write. And again, I've had Ken Blanchard on the show, and he purposely writes shorter books because he says,
Mm.
I don't want to write a large book that nobody will read. I want a
Right.
short book that people will read and
Yep.
implement. And
Me
again,
too.
I really do think it's important that books are short to the point and they teach you a lesson, and then you take that lesson and you apply it.
I agree.
So as an author, I don't care if you read my book, but I do care
Mhm.
if you read it and implement the ideas in the book. That's what I want. And I'm sure you're the same way. That's what
The
you want
same
as well.
way. And just
Yeah.
a side point, Ken Blanchard was one of my college instructors.
Oh, wow.
I went to Ohio University, and Ken Blanchard and Paul Hersey were both instructors there at the time, situational leadership model, and their courses were beyond outstanding.
Isn't that great to hear?
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
they say don't meet your heroes, and I met Ken, and he was exactly what I thought he would be. So,
yeah,
so he's just a
yeah,
wonderful person, a wonderful human being who's made a real impact in the
yeah,
world.
yeah,
And like when I grow up, I'd like to be, like him, but I
yeah,
know that I could never be like him. He's done so much. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, this has been great. Again, we'll put links in the show notes. Listeners, again, get out there, get one of these books that Paul has written. This is a great book. Just even if maybe you've been around leadership for a long time, maybe you're new to leadership, but this is a really important point. What are you providing in terms of the right amount of leadership? And again, every leader can work on this. Every leader can make adjustments, and you can make adjustments too. This is a short book, easy to read. You're going to get a lot out of it. So I highly recommend it. Follow the link below in the show notes. Paul, thanks for coming back on the show. Thanks for all that you do on leadership. And I really appreciate you coming back.
Thanks for having me, John. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks again. Well, that is it for today. Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we can continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is John Rennie saying take care and lead well.